Baby. Well, greetings and salutations, test takers. This is the Series 7 Guru coming to you from my off-grid studio, getting our kicks on historic Route 66 with our always very special guest, VIP, the Test Geek himself, in flesh. There's an unnatural person, Test Geek Exam Prep LLC, and then there's the natural person, managing member, Brian Lee. So we'll take care of some housekeeping, and then we'll help you with any content you may want to ask us about. Tell us what serious exam you're taking, where you're joining us from. I have so many Venezuelans and Brazilians in my life right now, so maybe tonight our toasting beverage should be cachaça. Am I saying that right? That's the rum-based drink of Brazil, so I think I'm saying it right. But anyways, maybe we'll do that for our toasting beverage this evening, or tequila. We'll figure it out. Let's see. What's that?
Do you have any?
I had somebody who's supposed to send me, and the UPS is out there, so I might have to let you take over a couple minutes while I go see if that is the bottle. You know, the gift or gratuity rule does not apply to gurus or test geeks. Knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. I may have told you the story, Brian. The guy was gonna. I spent a lot of time helping this guy. I mean, a lot, and I wasn't charging him for it. And then, you know, he went to give me some money or something, and you know, he put out 100, and I said, "Hey, you know what? You probably should be a little more than that. Keep going, my friend." I'll tell you what. All right, let's see what housekeeping we got to take care of. If you do have a question for us in terms of testable content, it's helpful to Brian and I if you tell us what exam you're taking, SIE, Series 7, whatever, with a capital Q followed by the question. Sometimes we can figure it out, but it's helpful. The more you can, you know, more particular you can be, or the more specificity you can add, the more helpful we can be. You know, sometimes, Brian, we get those vague questions like, how does the universe work? You know, it's hard for us to attack that kind of question, you know. So as you can, try and add some specificity to it, as well as the exam. The best free supplement to your paid study materials is my channel. And my YouTube channel, I have such an attitude of gratitude. I've got to thank you guys. We had a record July. We had over 300,000 views. Right? I don't know if that's one person watching videos 300,000 times, and we had 2,000 new subscribers, over 2,000. Crazy. We're coming up on 7.5 million views. We're coming up on 60,000 subscribers. We have more views, more subscribers, more videos, more watch time. We have 1 million hours, 6 hours of watch time on the channel. So crazy, crazy, crazy. Can't thank you much. Now, the channel can be a little daunting because I just told you there's 1,700 videos. So the best way to make access of this as a free supplement is to find your series playlist, SIE, for example, and you'll see the playlists are in watch order. Or as Brian and I always say on 6566, Brian and I did a podcast series, and that's the first video in the video playlist. We always want you to watch that first, and it says playlist 104. So I still get people asking, which one should I watch first? The one that says start here, playlist 104. The videos are in suggested watch order as well. Now, tonight, it's okay. Brian and I know we're going to get asked, and we will answer the same question, I know, for the 15th time. Use the channel search bar if you actually have a particular question. Don't, you know, tonight's too late. Just put it in the chat. We'll answer it. But if it's accrued interest, put it in the chat bar, or parity, or margin, and then all those videos will magically appear. I did another video explication, Brian, a parity. I probably have 15 versions of that. So I don't think the person just put parity or convertibles in there. I could watch me do this 16, 17 times. Did it again. It's okay. But that's what you should use, the search bar. Don't be looking for a needle in a haystack. Use that channel search bar if you're looking for a particular information on a particular topic. Now, if you're looking for a paid supplement, if you don't already have a Kaplan Q Bank, I think the Kaplan Q Bank is best in its class. And you get a 15% discount on all Kaplan products, including the Q Banks, with Guru 15 at checkout. That on the Series 7 gets you 3,600 plus practice questions, a performance tracker for $55.80. I think it's a great investment. Now, until we can get Brian Test Geek to provide a Q Bank, you know, what are we going to do? Kaplan's the best until further notice. But if you're looking for distillation of your paid study materials, you're looking for a bridge from, the paid study materials to test, and Brian's the best at that. And we're lucky enough that Brian gives us a 20% discount on his content. And that discount code is Guru20, all in on Brian for his video distillation of the entire series, whatever series you're taking. I think it comes in a little over $100 with the videos, the class notes. And what I think is really nice is the practice test. And Brian's practice tests, I believe, are the best in correlation to the actual exam. So there you go, if you're looking for such a thing. Now, on my booking channel, oh boy, long day's journey into night. So if you go to deantinneytutoring.setmore.com, everything there is not free. There's a couple things that are free, but that's where you can book a shared screen practice test, which I did today with Jacob. You can book tutoring. You can do all kinds of things. But if you win our coaching call, you're going to go there, and you don't win tutoring at a date and time of your choice. You win a coaching call. And we also have a Q&A jam session there that's free. And we also have free office hour per paid student. So there are a couple items that are free on my booking page. You are not alone. You are not alone. So we have a lot of communities. Right now, Brian, we just crossed 1,400 members in our Facebook community with chats and all the various things. I love it. I hardly have to get involved half the time. Sometimes I got to correct somebody on information that isn't quite accurate. But, they're talking to each other. They're forming study groups. We have chats for all the various things. We just crossed 1,400 members. And that's called baby brokers doing hat tricks. Baby brokers is a term of endearment for rookies in the securities industry. And a hat trick are 3 successes in a limited time frame. That would be SIE 663, for example, or SIE 763 or SIE 766. You get the idea. We help with all those exams. We also have Reddit communities. Our Reddit communities are popping. We have a Reddit community for Series 6. Brian and I are going to do another podcast series for the Series 6 because we feel that,
Uh-oh. You froze up there, Dean. Life living off the grid.
Yeah. Mom just blew the circuits this morning and this afternoon. So I'm hoping she's not in the cabin. Right. I said, Mom, you can't run the air fryer, the air conditioning, the microwave, everything at the same time. So if we do lose each other, no, I'm working my way back to you. I do have redundancy here off grid. So I just have to switch my internet system. Now, if I lose power, that's an entirely different proposition. Anyways, where were we? We have a Reddit for 6. We have a Reddit for SIE and Series 7, our Series 7. We have a subreddit community for NASA exam, Series 66. And we have a subreddit for 9, 10s, 57s, 79s, and 24s. Okay, so let's see what we got going on, and let's get going on helping you with some content. Let me get rid of that. Let me get rid of this. Boom. And let's see what we got going on. I do have some questions that were sent in earlier, but I'll save those for later. We'll take care of the people who are here live first. We'll do that later. Drew, all right. Woo! Well, we do 2 things, Drew, for victorious test takers. We ring the bell, ask not for whom the bell rings for thee. And we also toast your testing victory. So our drinking game, if you'd like to play along, is you can drink your beverage of choice. And I've decided tonight we're going to do a Neho. So cheers to Drew's testing victory. I need it today. South Carolina, baby. All right. I got a ticket in South Carolina. I didn't even know I was in South Carolina. I was teaching at Vanguard in North Carolina, and I had a rental car, and I was going to see my cousins in Georgia. I thought the trooper was very nice. He pulled me over. He said, I would like to give you an official souvenir of your visit to South Carolina. I think I was targeted because I had that plate from New York because it was a rental car. And I kind of thought it was not fair because he goes, you were speeding. I said, yeah, I was trying to get out of the mix of all these trucks. I mean, I don't want to be in these 18-wheelers, and I don't want to be behind them. So, yeah, you got me, man. I did that. But it was so easy to pay, Brian. You just go online. They make it easy. Poof.
I thought you meant you were going to pull out some Benjamin.
Yeah, they're going to pull out my $100 bill. I said, the line is, yeah, I bet you're going to give me a ticket and have your $100 bill. He goes, you lose. I took Brian's 66 practices a week ago, got a 71. I averaged 80, 85s. Well, 71 on Brian is okay. Listen, I had somebody get a 74 on Brian, and they're testing the next day. I said, you got to remember it's got positive correlation. Yeah. So if you have a week and you got a 71 on Brian's test geek, I think you're in good shape. find a little more margin of safety, but we have every reason to believe you're going to pass. Now, listen, Brian, I don't know about you. I get so aggravated at Acolyte. Remember, Acolyte's one of our favorite students. He does everything we ask him. I'm just remembering him or her, whoever Acolyte is. One of our favorites. I mean, last week, we could use him as a model. I did this, I did that. I'm like, well, that's what we want. Anyways, Acolyte, remember, you're going to pick up some points. But I had somebody who didn't do well on Brian's exam and then started blaming Brian. I had a guy who was blaming me that he didn't pass his 24. I didn't tutor him. And, I have a 24 playlist. And I said, listen, you missing your mark is on you. That's not on me. That's not on Brian. That's not on Kaplan. It's, take some ownership. And then he said, well, you're a bully. And I said, listen, a lack of accountability for somebody who misses their 24 is shocking. I mean, but Acolyte, I have no reason to believe you're not going to make your mark, particularly based on last week's discussion, this discussion. Don't be nervous. Just be confident in the execution of your study plan. Be confident in yourself. Most importantly, be confident in your answers on test date, right? Brian has a favorite line. You want to give it to him, Brian?
No, we saved that for the end.
Okay, you got to stick around to the end. Okay. All right, David. Woohoo! Are you David Colby? Are you any relationship to Colby College? Or Colby, the former director of the CIA. Woohoo! Awesome. And our toast in honor of your testing victory. I'm going to put into Chat GPT, have it make me a toast for victorious test takers. See what it comes to. A first live stream. Welcome, Z400 Racer 37. That sounds like some sci-fi character and some apocalypse movie. I love it. Seriously, 400 Racer 37. I'm trying to figure out if that's like a particular type of car or what the connection is. Love it. Love it. Well, welcome. We're here every Tuesday, 5 p.m. I joke tonight is a long day's journey into the night because, I tutored all day long, did a shared screen practice test. And so, I'm not as spirit-filled as I usually am about Tuesday night, but it must be done. Someday, maybe I'll turn it over to Brian and say, Brian, can you substitute for me tonight? Dean and Brian for 62. Which formula or equations do you believe are the most important to memorize? Here's what I would say. I think people overestimate, Noah, the amount of math on both exams, 65 and 66. Most of the math is about inputs and outputs, not can you actually do the math. I had a guy hit the button on the tour. He goes, Dean, I'm not paying you to teach me math. You give me 2 numbers, I can solve for the third. He ended up passing, but he said, I wish I would have spent a little more time instead of reverse engineering the formula, kind of know what it is. Now, that being said, I would be comfortable with liquidity balance sheet calculations, working capital, current ratio, acid test ratio, and then solvency, debt to total capitalization. Mainly, it's can you pull it out of lineup? Working capital can best be described as. I'd be able to do current yield and total return. I would be able to understand, not actually calculate, but I would be able to understand the basics of valuation techniques like book value, like discounted cash flows applied to a stock dividend discount model, that kind of thing. And I like it, Brian. That's exactly how I teach you to say it's going to be an A, B, C, D, and then you pick it out of the ratio. Definitely should be able to do PE ratio. Brian, I'm giving your board. What do you think? Did I miss any major math on the 65?
No, and thank you for giving it to me because I deal with this question. I just talked to 3 other people today alone about this. And Dean, we're going to blame the textbooks because that's what I do, is blame the textbooks. They infuse so much math in this thing. No wonder people get anxious over all the math formulas. I'm going to tell you the Series 66 on average has 1 calculator question.
Yeah.
1. Series 65, 4 or 5, and that's it. Now, might they ask you, like Dean said, about inputs into some of these formulas? Perhaps. And the liquidity ratios and leverage ratio from balance sheets are a good place to start. I've had 37,000 people tell me they don't even see a Sharpe ratio.
Yeah.
except as a wrong answer sometimes. So there's very little math. And I want to give you an example of a question that I'll let you decide if it's math related or not.
Now, by the way, before you do that, Brian,
Yeah.
I just want to comment. That's kind of what I was saying. It's mainly a recognition of that answer set, right? So please note, Brian might say, what best describes current assets by current liabilities? It's mainly recognition. So I'm sorry, but I just want to intervene. It's more about the answer set than it is doing the math.
Exactly. Which of the following liquidity ratios is generally highest? Question mark.
I like it.
Maybe Series 65, but probably more likely 66. Something like this. That's where your math question could come in. Which of the following liquidity ratios is typically highest? Question mark. Okay.
Yeah. Well, remember, debt to equity is solvency, not liquidity. Price to earnings is not liquidity. And acid test, you're taking out the inventory. So the current ratio would be the answer to Brian's question.
So I always tell people, you got to know the liquidity ratios. And as Dean just said, he was right on top of that. The leverage ratio is debt to equity. Price to earnings is just a technical indicator of something.
Yeah, price earnings is a valuation technique, right? There, the test question is about value investors versus growth investors.
And I bet most of us who are taking the 65, 66 know that the current ratio includes the inventory. Therefore, it's going to produce a larger number.
Yeah,
right?
I like it.
So that's kind of how your math question.
Yeah, I do think it's mainly recognition. So no, that's what Brian will go with me on this, is go this far. If you tell me that you missed a NASA exam, 65 or 66, because of math, I'm going to say, Noah, you had bigger problems elsewhere, my friend. You could guess B and assign those to the universe, and you'd still be in the mix, right? So I hope that was helpful. But yeah, I think people overestimate. I agree with you, Brian. Oh my God. Chuck Lowenstein is the subject matter expert for NASA exams at Kaplan. I love him. He's eccentric. He knows that I talk about him. I don't know, but all test prep vendors are guilty of this. But Chuck will have a huge, highly involved math question. And what frosts me, Brian, is when he starts the rationale by saying, you won't see this on your exam. And then you go, well, then why did you get 15 pages and 4 questions? So yet another reason, Noah, why you might want somebody to distill those test prep materials with all that math into what you actually need to know to pass your exam. My employer had me complete the SIE, then the Series 66, and then the 7. EIDY. That's crazy. Let me take a guess, Jason. Did your employer make you take the SIE and 66 unsponsored? You paid your fees before they sponsored and paid the 7. I hope it's not because they were cheap. I hope it was because they didn't have faith in you being able to run the table and create your hat trick. But it is odd. I do think it's odd. So my guess is it's about money. What do they say? Follow the money. So my guess, if I were going to say, why would I wouldn't do this to you, Jason, but I would want you to show me that you have some initiative. I'd say, listen, you don't need me for the SIE and the 66. You only need me, my broker dealer, for the 7. Your thoughts, Brian?
I absolutely agree with you. But isn't that why the SIE was created? To determine whether someone has the wherewithal to study?
It's true.
It's being redundant unless they're just cheap and don't want to pay it.
Yeah, but that happens, right, Jason? So people won't, some firms don't want to pay for the study materials. But by the way, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can imagine other firms give you 4 months with pay, set you up with some test prep vendors, sometimes pay for your tutoring. And then again, the expectations they have goes a little higher about you getting it done, right? So that's my guess, all about the money. Melissa, 65 from Atlanta, scheduled August 30th. You got plenty of time. Thank you, guys. Been taking my studying more serious. I like that. As you get closer, that timeline, right, you should kind of accelerate. I'll say, instead of seriousness, pedal to the metal, so to speak. Because what's going to happen is, I think your study plan, Melissa, is kind of like an option. Option contracts have time value, and that time value erodes. Options are a wasting asset. So is your study plan. It's going to collapse on you at some point. And you don't want it to collapse, and you still got things to do. So I like that you're August 30th. You're putting on the pedal a little bit. And then Brian, how good? This has been a great day. I mean, I'm kind of tired, but I had a guy who was helping on 24. He had a lot of anxiety. He said, Dean, I can't. I said, I'm totally booked. I have no time for you. And he said, come on. So I did 2 hours with him this morning at 6:30. He passed today, but you know what, Melissa, I'm so glad he passed, and he deserved. He worked hard. But it would have been more helpful if we started a week out, 7-10 days out, trying to help him make that, drag him across the finish line, so to speak. I had another person I was working for. My life is so full of Venezuelans and Brazilians right now. So I don't know why, but I had a Brazilian young lady. She passed this morning as well. Same thing. A lot of anxiety. I don't like talking to you the night before your exam because I believe in the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. And we don't want to go backwards, but I did get on a coaching call with her and just kind of talk her off the ledge a little bit. And she passed. But same thing. I wish we would have had a timeline that wasn't collapsing like that. It would be better if we're having discussions 7-10 days out. We know what your margin of safety is, right? And we're not trying to create a margin of safety in the last couple of days. So, 7-10 days out is when you really should step on the pedal. So love it, Melissa. Plenty of time. Yeah, Brian.
And Dean, you and I always talk about having study blocks, right?
Yeah.
90 minutes, study blocks, change things up, read, watch video, do. And so that's why I like what Melissa's saying. She's taking it one chunk at a time, one study block at a time. And it's like what Dean says, right? Inch by inch, the exam's a cinch. So I really like that comment.
I do. The other thing I do like too, Brian, is she's got remember last week, I don't know if you're joining us. I hope she does join us again because I gave her a little bit of a hard time. She was studying, Melissa, without a test date. And we just don't think that's best practice. Best practice is give yourself a fudge factor, whether it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks, but get a test date and then reverse engineer that study plan. There's no mythical place in time where you go, I'm ready to get my test date. No. Or I'm ready to take my test. You can't be doing that. You'll be 8 months studying for this thing. So I think 6 to 8 weeks is when you set your test date. And then your point, you start executing your study plan and then you accelerate that. And then hopefully you're done, right? Hopefully you're done. I will, Carolyn, link to my podcast episode, You Failed, Is It Over? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. And I have 5 recommendations about how to restart. The first recommendation, Brian and I are on the same page about it. And what we think you should do is while the hurt is fresh, we want you to go ahead and do an intellectual debrief with yourself. The way you do that is you get the FINRA Series 7 content outline, you print the PDF, you go through it, and you use plus, 0, minus. Plus means you read that content, you go, oh, I understood that. That didn't do me in. 0 means you were at par, passing. Minus means you need to be doing some work. Now, Carolyn, counterintuitive, but we're looking for, we hope, a bunch of minuses in a particular area where we know where to focus our remediation efforts on. May not be the case. I mean, if you got a 69, maybe you're just weak all over. So then how do you restart? So then put it away so you can take your notes, remember everything you got. Every draw is a little different. I'd give yourself a brain a chance to refresh and reset. Kind of like, a farmer lets the field lay fallow just so the soil can get back, to being able to support. I think Brian's a science guy. Is that nitrogen? I think you can't have if you plant too many stuff, you just, you wear out the soil. Same thing with your brain. Your brain needs a kind of a chance to take a little break. I would say your break should be 7 to 10 days out. But Karen, I really believe 30-day, you can book your new test date as long as it's 30 days from your fail. So go out 5 weeks, get that date for when you're going to go back and slay the dragon, right? I'd like to know what your score was, Carolyn. Remember in the chat, your private business is in private. But Carol, I'd be interested to know how close you were, because then maybe, Brian, I could add some more color to that for you. Brian, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. You always look at that, the score sheet when you leave the test center and look at those areas, find the weak areas.
Yeah, and it will break out. It'll match up perfectly, Karen, with your score sheet. It'll actually tell you on your score sheet what those areas are and what they're testing you on.
FINRA's made it a bit ambiguous over the years, but you can still tell.
Yeah. The way I used to say it, Brian, is when people would say, well, how do you know that's not on the test? I'd say, well, they're not allowed to randomly make up things to test you on. It's got to be within the context of the content outline. Anything in there is fair game, but, they got me. I wanted to pass my 766 15 years ago, but had a lot of trouble with the regulatory components. It's memorization, not logic. Well, I got good news for you. When you get past the 7, like my guy who passed the 24, then it does make sense about logic. And a lot of our tutoring was just about what is the best answer given this circumstance. I joke on the 7, check with your immediate supervisor is always a great answer. 24, you are the immediate supervisor. That's no longer the case. I'm glad you're going to give it another crack. Why not? Why not? I'm 2 weeks out from taking the 7. Just finished unit 13 through 20, I guess, or unit 13, 20. Average 91. Oh my God, AP, impressive. 94. Oh, and we're 2 weeks out. I wish you were testing tomorrow. You're worried you're behind. Oh my God, no. I'm not sure if you said 13 of 20, or you mean 13 through 20, but even if that's 13 and you got 7 more units, you're in a great spot. Most people would want to be in that spot. 91, 94%, rinse and repeat.
What does not make you worry? 96?
There's probably people in the chat, AP, going, well, really? Greetings from Washington. Haas, you're right in Brian's neck of the woods. I'm taking the 66 on August 30th. How much? We just had this one. Should I put in on memorizing formulas? Net present value, no. I would memorize that because net present value is used to compare to present value. Net always means difference, right? So I always joke, it's not you're the math geek. Brian is the math geek or test geek, right? So I call Brian. I say, hey, Brian, I'm considering buying this bond. Can you do a discounted cash flow and tell me what the present value of the bond I'm considering purchasing is? And Brian calls me. He says, hey, Dean, I got the number for you. The present value using DCF of the bond is 900. And I go, Brian, fantastic. It's 850. I have $50 of net present value. And so the question is not can you do the math because somebody else is doing the math. Is do you understand that represents a good value, a good deal, if you will, right? Now, Brian calls me and says present value is 900. And, I tell him the price is 950. It has negative net present value. So it's not can you do the calculation of net present value, but do you know that it's either a good value, fairly valued, or undervalued based on the math? Somebody else is doing the math. So again, Brian calls me. He says, Dean, net present value is 900. I go, damn, Brian, what a coincidence. The bond is at 900. There's zero net present value. And then Brian says, well, you know what that means, Dean? I said, what does that mean, Brian? He goes, that means the market is pretty efficient. I go, man, always using those big words. So discounted cash flow, you need to know is a valuation technique. Again, like figuring out the present value, and this is used for income streams. The premise, Oz, is that money today is always worth more than money in the future. So once again, I call Brian. This is the classic example. I say, hey, Brian, I just won the lottery. They're offering me $100,000 a year for 10 years. Or they're offering me, or let's make it $100,000 for 15 years. I understand, Brian, time value of money. I understand the $100,000 this year, Brian, I already know is worth more than the $100,000 15 years today. But they're offering me the lump sum of $1 million, and I know it's a math problem. So what should I do? I say, can you do to them DCF, discounted cash flows, evaluation technique, so I can decide whether or not I should take the lump sum or take the payments? He calls me, he says, Dean, I did the DCF, the discounted cash flow on those income streams, and it looks like the present value of $100,000 for 15 years is $1.1 million. So you should take the payments. Or he says, Dean, it's a $900,000. You should take the lump sum. So again, we're using it as a valuation technique, kind of like PE is a valuation technique, kind of like price to book is a valuation technique. And then you should know we need income streams to do it. So it's good for bonds. If we apply it to stocks, it's called the dividend discount model. Now, please note in the explanation I'm giving you, Oz, I've done no math. I'm just telling you what we need to recognize about the math and how it would be informative in, making investments, right? STC, well, Haas, if you joined us a little late, Brian and I can easily go on rants about all test prep vendors, Knobman, STC, Past Perfect, Kaplan, and how much of a heavy focus all of them put on the formulas and the math. When Brian and I think max, Brian said one, I think you might have to use your calculator 3 or 4 times. And usually it's basic arithmetic. and I'm arithmetically challenged, but even I can do it. So that's a side. You know, they're not going to ask you to do math that I'd have to call Brian to do for me, right? It's going to be math I can do. Brian, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for the 66, I put kind of a guideline up here. Again, it depends upon your draw. You know, you might get lucky and get one each, right, for a total of 2 questions, but it can vary. But Dean's absolutely right. There's very little mathematics to it. Now, if you get my video course, I talk about some of the math involved in it. The 66, again, as Dean and I have said, it's not a bad idea to know the inputs to some of this, even though you're not going to be required to calculate it, right? Because then you know what's going to be affected and what it's used for. Now, for the time value of money formula, where we find this, right, I actually tell people it's probably a good idea to know it. That way you can kind of see it logically, but that's me, right? I'm not intimidated by math. And that formula's got an exponent in it. And that calculator doesn't even use exponents. So you're not going to have to do any of this math. So
internal rate of return on, excuse me. I think of internal rate of return as the bridge between present value and future value.
Right.
You know, I spent almost my entire career without any glitches with the regulators. And Lenny, the FINRA examiner in District 1, took exception to me discussing a private equity asset allocation with a customer where I said to institutional investor, which means I'm kind of saying, Lenny, this person is capable of protecting their own assets. They don't need you. They're not a retail investor. But I said, listen, this private equity fund is targeting internal rates of return of 20%. And so, Haas, if you make a $5 million asset allocation, $5 million present value, and we can get an internal rate of return at 20%, the future value would be, right, that's the 20%, the internal rate of return that turns the 5 million in, let's say, 10 million. Now, Lenny took exception because he thought I was saying that we're going to get $10 million in my example. That I just made up the 10 million. If I did the math, whatever that number is. Right. But you get the idea here, even though I did the qualifiers on it. And, you know, I said, okay, fine. I won't tell people what the future value is. I thought it was ridiculous, the conversation with Lenny. But that's what I think of internal rate of return. Is the bridge between the present value and whatever that future value is. And then remember, Haas, if we don't get that internal rate of return, it's in terms of your financial destination, right? I say, hey, Haas, if we can get 7.2% as internal rate of return and you give me $100,000, this math is accurate. In 20 years, you would have $400,000. And then the other test question, Haas, well, we don't get that 7.2%. So what happens? If we get 6, we're not going to have the 400,000, right? We might have to work a little longer. I think of it as our financial destination, right? We're either going to get there sooner or later based on, you know, whatever our internal rate of return is. All right, let's see what's next here. I don't know. I think dump sheets have kind of a placebo effect. I don't think it lends itself as well on a Series 6 as it does to other exams. But if it makes you feel good, I guess you could do it. Kaplan has a quick sheet. Brian, what do you think data dump sheets as it relates to
6 with only 50 questions? What are you giving?
Yeah,
an hour and 20 minutes or something? I don't know.
If you're interested in that, you can Google Series 6 data dump sheet and see all. You want your own, by the way. Don't copy somebody else's, but maybe you can get some ideas about that. Acolyte. There's a question on 66 about a spouse and attorney having authority to do trades on the husband's account. Well, okay, so that means they have trading authorization. If they have authority to do trade in the husband's account, unless it's joint tenants with rights of survivorship, that means there's discretionary trading authorization. The attorney has oral authority. There's no such thing as oral authority unless the attorney is an investment advisor. There would have to be written documentation in place for anybody to be using limited trading authorization. So there's no such thing as oral authority for an attorney. If I'm calling on my doctor and I say, hey, Dr. Jones, I know that you probably are going to move forward. You're signing your investment advisory contract. I'd like to start redeploying the assets in your portfolio at Merrill Lynch. And so I now, for 10 days, can use oral authority to be exercising my discretionary authority. Please note, I'm not an attorney. I'm an investment advisory firm. On the BD side, there's no such thing. That authorization has to be in place. So maybe, Akla, you can give us context, but based on the context you provided, there's no such thing for the attorney having oral authority to exercise discretion. They love to give you these situations. You know, he told me to tell you. I go, well, Brian, that doesn't work. You know, Brian's significant other is Stacy, right? So if Stacy calls me and I have trading authorization on Brian's account, I, the broker, have it, and Stacy says, Brian told me to tell you. And as much as I believe that, and then I have to say, well, you know, sorry, Stacy. I mean, you know, I have to cover my own ass here, and I don't have the trading authorization. So if Brian wants to, you know, tell me that and give me some written authority, then no problem. Now, by the way, that's also shoves up as a question about it's not a joint account. There is no trading authorization. The spouse wants information on the account. Same answer. If they're not on the account, they don't have trading authorization. Wow, what a great testing victory. All right. That is a great one, man. That 10, my friend, deserves a toast. That is a slog. That is a real slog. So, Alexia, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Wow, I'm so happy. There's some testing victories I'm more excited about than others. And when somebody gets that 10 testing victory, I'm like, all right, woo. And if we can help on that, oh, man, if we can make a contribution and get you that. Now, did you have your 9? Are you a sales supervisor? Branch office manager in the house? Let us know. Let us know. Can I name 3 rabbit holes to stay away from? AP, I love that question. Margin, partnerships, balance sheets. Margin, partnerships, balance sheets. Do you agree with those 3, Brian?
To the most part, margins and limited partnerships, absolutely. Balance sheets, you got to know a little bit, and for the 66 as well. I don't like Kaplan's Muni chapter. It's too long.
Oh, okay. Well,
there's a lot of Muni.
Muni in a rabbit hole. I just had somebody the other day, and I said that we were going over their performance tracker. I said that Muni, that's where you need to turn to right away and remediate. So I don't think under any circumstance, even based on test prep vendors, I put Muni as a rabbit hole. That's just me. So AP, you know, So here's what I guess I'd say about rabbit hole. My margin lecture, AP, is called "Don't Overdose." Hint, right? That means you shouldn't be spending. I had a guy at Merrill Lynch. I love this guy, right? Because he's a very bright young man, and he kept sending me the most obtuse margin questions. He deserves a good answer, and I'd answer him, and I'd say, you know, this is time better spent elsewhere. This is just not a target-rich environment. You're not going to see any of these past perfect margin questions on the actual Series 7. And what I was so impressed with, he listened to me. He said, okay, Dean, I won't be sending you any more margin questions. I go, okay, great. Good. Right? So margin for sure. Now, AP, Brian and I also have a rant we do about test prep vendors. And test prep vendors never want to cull their materials, make them smaller, the book or the QBank. In the old Series 7, there were 10 or 11 questions on partnerships, and nobody has changed that discussion. And so all of the test prep vendors get in the rabbit hole on like recourse and non-recourse notes, and how does that add to your cost base if it's real estate or not. None of that is on the test. Maybe 2 or 3 partnership questions. It's basically the types, the GP, the LP. That's it. So those would be my 2 big ones. Balance sheets, what I would say is Brian is right. It's a bigger deal on NASA exams than your 7. 7 assumes we have a research department, and you're going to be an intermediary of that fundamental analysis. But even then, are the questions there? But if you tell me you missed because you weren't strong on a balance sheet or margin or partnerships, I'd say you have bigger problems elsewhere, would be my answer. Love the question, though. I love it. You know, making editorial decisions is really important, particularly as you get closer to your test date, right? Oh, Brian, I think Brian, let me see if I'm getting this right. Brian's saying, why don't you pay him to do it for you? Is that what you're saying, Brian? I like it. Right? The way I said that earlier, AP, is Brian is pretty good at distillation. So AP, I'll get somebody who Brian's paid supplement. I can't tell you how many times I get this call, right? Somebody will call me and say, you know, my Past Perfect, my Knopfman, my STC, my Kaplan, they have 100 pages on partnerships, and Brian barely even talked about it. I go, exactly. I want to be able to offer investment advisory services to people I develop a relationship. while maintaining my different primary job. And he talks out how to do this. But we're here to pass tests, not build a book of business. Yeah, it's going to be hard to find a firm that's going to let you, do this as a side hustle, right? So I'm reading that Z400 Razors. You want to have helping your people as a side hustle to your primary job. No, I would think you should transition to either this is going to be your full-time job, helping everybody, or people you choose to work with, and then it's going to be difficult to hire somebody like that. Brian, you can shut me down on this. Brian's significant other, Stacy, is an investment advisor. She does it professionally. I don't think Z400, if you asked Stacy to hire you at her investment advisory firm and you told her this, I wouldn't. I'd say, listen, you got to be all in, my friend. So, but you might find that though. There might be firms that would do that, but it would be less likely, I guess. What do you think, Brian? Not many investment advisory firms would be cool with that, I think.
The only other way I would think of is form your own RIA.
There you go. Yeah,
then
there you go.
Time
then your own boss. You can do whatever the heck you want, right? That's a lot more work than people think. Business, right? So it's not all it's cracked up to be. I would just tell you that, right?
So either way, not much of a side.
Yeah, but be honest though. Be honest with the firm. I mean, I had a broker, a guy with me, as his name was John. He was one of my best brokers, and he told me he was going to do part-time. And I said, nah, it didn't speak to me. It was one of my clients. I thought, well, if I sponsor him and then he's, going to be managing his own account. And it was really stupid because I didn't realize that. I knew he had a lot of money, but I didn't realize his family had way more money, and they weren't doing business with me. And then I turned him into a broker, and all of a sudden he was managing his family's money. That was plenty. That'll work. I mean, I had some baby brokers, Brian, they'd say, well, you're not on John about making cold calls. I go, well, John's got, $100 million in assets under management, so no, if he wants to go play golf, knock himself out. We're rabbit hole. I think mid-70s AP is where Brian and I think are pretty comfortable about somebody making their mark. The higher, the better. Now, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. Was it UAP or somebody was telling us they were getting 90s, 94s? We would just add to a caveat to that. Make sure that's not because you've memorized questions and answers. It's a great score. And if you're getting those scores because you understand the question you're being asked and you understand the answers being offered, fantastic. Very, very rarely somebody will be scoring high. Mid-70s, I told you, we think is adequate. Most test parameters want you 80s, 90s, but Brian and I, mid-70s would be, because there's variances in your favor. That being said, somebody will have those scores and then miss the mark. And almost always is because they memorized the questions of the test prep vendor and didn't understand the content. That's another reason I like Brian's practice test, because it's usually one people haven't seen. And so it's a nice kind of another data point for them.
Exactly.
Passed on 7 on Saturday. Woo! Using content from both of us. Yes. We don't believe, Todd, people are monogamous about their study vendors. We think if somebody can help you, whether it's Brian and I, know you don't want to have too many voices in your head. And so one of the reasons Brian and I can collaborate is the things we disagree on are not enough that you're going to be confused. Like I worked with somebody today who worked with Brian earlier in the week, and we might say something different, but it's not going to be substantially different. So we love that. We love use every resource you have, every arrow in your quiver. Just be careful. You don't get so many voices in your head that you start getting confused, right? So Brian has his aerobics thing. I call it the matrix. We track money in and out. Other people do options differently. I use a teeter-totter seesaw. Other people use a bond triangle. That part can be a little difficult. So just make sure that I love it. Our content is, I think, simpatico. It makes some sense. Have the 66 for next Tuesday, studying about 6-7 hours a day. Make sure, Todd, you break that up. So I would want that to be 6 hours, not 7. And I want that to be 4 study blocks of 90 minutes with a 30-minute break in between. That's a full day of study. If you start at 9 to 10:30, 30-minute break to refresh and reset. You must take a 30-minute break. 11, 12:30, refresh, reset, 1 o'clock. 2:30, refresh, reset, 3 o'clock, 4:30. That is a 6-hour, 8 hours day at work study. Mix up on those 6 hours your activity. So if you're doing 4 study blocks of 90 minutes, don't do 4 study blocks of reading. Read in 1 study block, do practice questions in another, watch videos in the third. I'd like you to do the more passive things in your later study blocks. Like if you're going to watch videos, I would like that to be your fourth study block, and do your reading and your practice questions this first study box. And if you can change the subject area, that would be helpful too. If you change the channel intellectually, you'll stay fresher longer. Is that doable? Absolutely doable. Absolutely doable. Brian, your thoughts on that?
Well,
What happened? We just lost audio on you. Is that my end?
I guess I'll be the Debbie Downer this time.
Okay, there you go. I hear you now, Debbie Downer.
I'm going to be the Debbie Downer. He just patented himself 10 days for the Series 66. Now, some people are very good test takers, and they can handle that. But on average, that's a little bit on the aggressive side.
Yeah, it is aggressive.
I like to have it at least 2 weeks, but that's up to you. If you're a good test taker, you fly through these things, then it shouldn't be a problem. But I'd prefer at least 2 weeks.
Yeah, you don't have a time fudge factor there for sure. So if it's Tuesday, that means we better get a practice test score, Friday, just to make sure that you're on track. With the power of God, woo, man, Kaplan, oh my God, Dean Tinney and Brian Lee, all right, Gabe, man.
Boy, we're in some good company, Dean.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would not want to depend on God to intervene on my behalf, but hey, if it works, if it works. One of my favorite sayings is from Horatio Alger, Gabe. Horatio Alger had a famous saying: God helps them who help themselves. Those who wait passively for fortune to shower their gifts upon them are likely to wait a long time. So I like it. That's a good combination, right? Power of God, prayer, doing the work. Absolutely love it. Love it. And Gabe, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine.
Tequila.
They ran out of alcohol and he said, party on. Now, when I tell my missionary father and his friends that, they get upset with me and they go, well, it was non-alcoholic wine. I go, really? Where was that in the Bible? I don't remember that part. Studying the Series 7 using Achievable. Make sure you supplement, Doug. Make sure you supplement, because the final exam scores at Achievable, this is my only gripe, have way too much variance, test term, way too much standard deviation. So make sure you confirm that Achievable score by doing a practice test from Brian, free, available on the channel, or you can pay him $20 and get a PDF of it, or watch me do a past STC one, or watch me do a Notman one, or watch me do a Kaplan one, or watch me do my own, just to confirm that score. Now, Doug, I do have another Series 7 practice test coming. I told Brian I'm bringing out of mothballs. It's called the Alpha exams. And the Alpha exams, Doug, I'm going to put that on the channel in a couple of weeks. Unlike your actual exam, Doug, that gives you a balance of easy and difficult questions, the Alpha exam only gives you the most difficult concepts that you would expect to encounter on your Series 7. Do not be alarmed if you don't score as well. Woo! It's coming. It's coming. I'm going to steal Brian's line in the heading of that. And Brian's going to save that for the end. So remind me, and I'll say how I'm going to paraphrase Brian for the video description. Irish, your Irish is showing. I don't know what that means.
The God.
There you go. There you go.
Hello,
I'm taking myself up a couple weeks. I'm struggling with options. Yeah, that's okay, Rebecca. People do. I have a options playlist. I'll put it in the video description. The first 4 videos are really important. Video 1 is introduction to options. Video 2 is basic options. Video 3 is stock plus options. The last video is advanced option strategies. Make sure you build. Options are the only ones where you can't, in other parts of the 7, Rebecca, if you don't get something, it's okay, because something completely new will be coming. And you can say, okay, well, I didn't get that, but I can get this. But options are different. If you don't lay that base, you have no clue of a straddle or spread if you haven't laid the base. And so sometimes I have to tell people, well, you're not ready for advanced options. You got to get the basics first. So make sure you don't try and bite that all off at once, right? So make sure you do that incrementally, and that's how I would recommend doing that. Regulatory questions are not as big a deal as options. The chalk lines, that's not as testable as product information. You can get 20 plus or minus 5 on options. Now, remember, if you are struggling with options, there are a lot of option questions that aren't really option questions. They're just recognition questions. When do options expire? When does the option agreement have to be back? How does the OCC assign exercise notices? So if we can't get this under control in a couple of weeks, make sure at least you get all that recognition stuff you're entitled to as it relates to options. Let's say 20, Brian. I think you think there's lower than 20.
That's about right.
But my point is, Brian, how would you think maybe a third is just recognition of stuff that really isn't about options, like the disclosure document, that kind of thing?
That's exactly right. And I'll tell you this, most people, the majority of people say that less than half are calculation.
Yeah. So
the recognition,
good news, I guess. One of my all-time favorite test takers, Rebecca. Oh, what a surprise. Her name was actually Rebecca. I don't know how she could have been at Fidelity for 5 years and never taken a 7. And, that came up in one of her interviews, and Fidelity told her, whoever, her supervisor was, that if she doesn't have a 7, she's going to be redeployed some area of Fidelity. And, she doesn't want to do that. She kind of likes where she's at. So she had to take and pass her 7, and she was really struggling with options. And I said, well, listen, you don't really, Rebecca, need to know all of this. You need to know 72% of it with 100% accuracy. So I'm not suggesting that we blow off options. I'm just suggesting that let's pay attention to that and let's keep trying to get it under control. But if we don't, we're 2 days out, we just got to assign it to the universe and make sure we get the recognition questions we're entitled to. Now, in those days, Rebecca, they gave you a score passing or not. And Rebecca got the perfect score. She didn't learn any more than was required. She got a 72. Woo! Now, I would want you to have a little margin of safety, but I teased her. I said, you should go back to your firm and say, I got the perfect score. Right? I joke, if you got over 90 in the days when they gave scores, Rebecca, I'd say, you wasted a lot of time. You don't need a 90. And I might say, I think I should fire you now. You got over 90. I'm going to supervise you if you're smarter than me. You're going to be ahead of me all the time, right? The whole generation, for my whole generation. Well, I don't know what that means.
Again,
I've never been as excited as I am about the younger generation. I have so many young men and women I'm working with coming into our industry, Brian, that are putting in the work, and I just am so happy for them. Like JP Morgan, right? They're going to go work and get mentorship from those bankers like Jamie Dimon, a legend, and Brian Moynihan, and we're passing that torch, that next generation. Jane Fraser at Citigroup. I'm glad that people are coming back in the office. And then the other thing, I love Z400 Racer 37. You probably heard me say this a lot. Brian and I are very blessed, and the securities industry has been very good to us. Now, I had an idiot who didn't understand what that meant, Brian. I had to tell him that means I'm rich. I don't really have to do this if I don't want to. I could, not have a YouTube channel, not charge for tutoring. I'm fine. But what I say is, if you're poor, like Brian and I were, and you deserve to be rich, man, there is no better industry than ours, I think. Right? If you're poor and deserve to be rich, man, the securities industry. Now, I told you, John, who came to work for me, was already rich. And I told you I didn't want to hire him because of that, because I thought he's not going to be motivated. But what a great industry you have. So your generation, I got to tell you, Brian, what have you been?
I do not use stereotypes when it comes to generational study.
There you go. Oh, I like that. That's such a better answer.
There's differences, but intellectually, I find baby boomers and Gen Xers.
Okay. All right. I got to say, though, I'm a little probably more prejudicial because my friend's grandson was doing some handy works for me stuff, pulling weeds and stuff. And I thought, Brian, he needs to join the Marine Corps. He needs a little more pep in his step. Needs a little more work ethic. So, but your point, I wouldn't say he's representative of his old generation.
Right.
Do you have any advice specifically about time frames on regulatory issues? If I hear a word, should I think a specific time frame? No, I mean, again, Rebecca, if you tell us you missed the mark because of time frames, there are some that are definitely testable, like the option agreement has to be back within 15 days. Customers on Reg T get 2 additional business days for settlement. The stuff that is there, but I don't think it's overwhelming, and I don't think it's material to your success. Your thoughts, Brian, on that?
I'm absolutely with you. I hear this a lot from people, or fairly often, and I don't know how to deal with it because I don't think there's a lot of it on the side.
Yeah.
Again, it might be that, the textbook.
Well, Rebecca, I
publisher-
do have a video. It's kind of long in the tooth. I probably should redo it or just, delete it. But I do have a video on here's a date, there's a date, everywhere a date. Here's a percentage, there's a percentage, everywhere is a percentage. I do go through the dates and percentages like 10%, 90%. I don't know. I if I check it tonight, Rebecca, and see the viewership, I might just hit the delete key because I'm with Brian. I don't think it's that much added value as it relates to the actual test.
The only place I ever did that was the 24. The principal.
Yeah, well, 24 does have a lot of testable minutia.
Right.
I'm so pleased with my guy who passed today. I'm just so happy for him.
Good.
I had another person pass. We listen. The testing gods are smiling favorably last week and this week, and we've just had so many people make their mark, and I just love it when people put in the work and they make their mark. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. Some people miss the mark, but boy, we've really been getting lucky here. Well, I shouldn't say lucky. They worked, right? They helped themselves. There you go. I figured it sounded like it was something Z400 Racer 37. I like that. 65 Friday, all looking good. All looks good. No, it's not too close to comfort. As long as you don't get wobbly, you don't panic, you don't change answers, you stay confident, you're going to be fine. So I don't ever worry about those scores, Keith. I worry about psyche and, people getting wobbly. There's no reason for you to be wobbly, right? You're testing Friday. You might want to go do the Test Geek 65. It's on the channel. You hit pause. You can watch me do it or me and a student do it and see how you do. Or you can pay Brian. I think it's worth sending him $20. It's a little over 20, I think, with the discount. Get his PDF of the 65 practice test. Do that just to get a confirmation score. I think it was, Brian, 20 something. Do we know what the price is? By the way, Keith, if you do that, please, I think we're very clear. If you want that, it's a PDF and it's a practice test with rationale. It isn't anything else. Every once in a while, Brian's saying, I give Brian his $20 and all I got was a PDF for the practice test. I go, well, I think we told you that's what you're going to get. I love it. I love it. Halfway through the 66 via Kaplan. I love it. What are the main differences between exemptions and exclusions? I don't think it's as testable distinction as people make it out to be. They go down a rabbit hole. It means I'm not registering. I'm not registering because I'm exempt or because I'm excluded. That's the point. Not can you tell me an exemption or an exclusion. The Lars on Fox, the way I use this, Brian, is when I was a senior instructor at Kaplan. I'm not a Kaplan employee, and Kaplan hires my LLC. But I would sometimes have a junior instructor with me, Brian, and we'd be at Vanguard, and he'd show up in his nice blazer and his tie. I'd show up in my Birkenstocks and shorts and Hawaiian shirt. And he said, I thought Kaplan instructors have to wear ties and blazers. I go, they do. He goes, well, you're not. I said, I'm exempt from that. That rule does not apply to me. Because what does it apply to me? I go, absolutely it applies to you. Now I say, Lars, remember, the point is, why is the guy not wearing a tie? Not whether it's exempt or exclusion. I said, I'll tell you what. If you're teaching in Phoenix and it's 120 degrees outside, you are excluded from having to wear a blazer and a tie. Right? That's not an exemption. That means if he shows up at Vanguard's campus in Philadelphia or North Carolina, he better be in a blazer and a tie. Right? But the testable point isn't if it's an exemption or exclusion. It's why you're not registering. Right? That's the key point. What do you think, Brian, about that? Don't you think people get in the weeds about the difference in this?
They do. Yeah. And
then remember, if it's a security, particularly if it's a security,
yeah,
it's 3 or 4, 2 or 3 questions. And people go down, the laundry list. And the other thing I would add to this is exemptions is simply a list of things, right? Exemptions, here's a list. And then exclusions are typically the transactions. It's a verb about why it's not, being done. All right, what's our next one here? Hey, Dean, also, Brian, think of the study guide. Yeah, do you, Brian's telling me he's getting, do you want me to keep my mouth shut or you want me to put it back out there again?
I don't care. Whatever.
Okay. So Brian has told me this week he's been getting 40 requests full. So it sounds like he's fulfilled your request already. However, Brian offered last week a free PDF on how to build a study plan. And he offered a free PDF called his cheat sheet. And it's showing up now on social media where people have obviously accepted this offer and they're circling it and sending it around places. So, Voltsville, if you sounds like you already accept the offer, but if you're interested in Brian's either his cheat sheet definitions of registrations or his study guide, send him an email at Brian. Let me see. I got your email here somewhere, Brian.
Who was the person? I was going to say Joe.
Let's see. Brian, there we go. Brian at Teskey. So if you're interested in those PDFs, just I told him, Brian, and I don't know if they've been using this phraseology in their emails to you. I've said, just tell Brian you're accepting the offer, and then he can, send you the whatever it is that you.
The previous writer, Larson Fox, who was
let me go back. Yeah, get rid of that.
Exemptions. My cheat sheet refers solely to the definitions and registration of persons, which might help you through that exemptions.
There you go. I love it. I love it. So boom.
What the heck? 41
Series 4. All right. NEMA, register option principal in the house. Not quite yet, but you're getting 24. Love it. A bit of a gap. I like it. Either suggested study calendars for Series 4. No, my comments, Nima, about Series 4 is I think people overestimate how much of that's going to be exotic option strategies versus supervision. It's a lot more about supervision than it is iron butterflies or condors or ratio rights or that kind of stuff. So that would be my comment. Not so much on a study calendar. The second point I would make is if it's been a long time, maybe you're 24 and you're doing package products. You're 24 at Franklin Templeton or American Funds or something. And you've been, now you powered up to get your 24. Well, then you might want to review basic options. Just to, get familiar again with what a call is and a put and, those basic strategies. Your thoughts on that one, Brian?
Absolutely. That's the key to the Series 4, I think. I've had people ask me for my matrix from the Series 7, and I tell them it's not about all the different strategies. It's about supervising reps who are recommending options.
I do, Nima. I do have a Series 4 playlist. In the playlist, I do have a tutoring replay I did where we went over some of the advanced option strategies. So, you can check that out, that playlist, and I do have some content there for you. What does Kaplan hammer that you don't think is overwhelmingly important on the test? Well, I think we got this in the big three earlier, didn't we?
That's right.
On all test prep vendors, I said partnerships, margin, and balance sheets. Brian, I think, wasn't as comfortable with the balance sheet part as putting it in that bucket, but I would put it in the bucket. And then, Brian, your comments were, did you put something different in your third?
Well, I think the munis are overdone.
There you go.
Munis. There's a lot of munis on the test. The chapter of munis is way overdone.
Well, I think it's the same reason, though, partnerships, Brian. I think because there used to be muni questions in the old days.
Yeah.
And nobody, because I think all the test prep vendors are guilty of, I will say it this way. Do I agree with Brian that whether it's Kaplan or any other test prep vendor, there is minutia on municipal bonds that you will not encounter on the Series 7? Yes, for the reason for partnerships and margins, the same reason. Nobody wants to delete pages out of their book or get rid of practice questions. And so they have some dated kind of questions that nobody's seen in years. Wow, man, Ricky, get a good night's sleep. As much as possible, you need to be well rested, have your reading skills in top form. Make sure you're confident in your answers tomorrow. Don't be changing answers. Don't be sucking up. And like I said, you got to go with what you got. The days of cramming the night before are over. So I would just put yourself in relax mode. Try and make sure you're as refreshed and reset as you can before tomorrow. You can't learn this stuff, any of this NASA FINRA exams. Test taking tip for all FINRA NASA exams. The days of cramming the night before are over. So the night before, you got a late afternoon, fold up your study effort, and just go with what you got. At that point, it's about sleep, guarding your psyche, maybe do a light review to keep your rhythm in the morning, and that's it. Brian, would you say night before, just get some rest? I mean, what else can you do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What else can you do?
We're done, yeah.
Parity is very testable. You should be able to calculate parity without breaking a sweat. Parity means equal. So let me give you an example. If I tell you on the test, a convertible bond is trading for $1,300 and it has a conversion ratio of 25 shares. That's the equivalent of paying 52 for the stock. 1,300 divided by 25 shares, 52. That's what parity equals. It's equal to paying 52 for the stock. If I tell you the stock's at 50 and there's a convertible into 25 shares, 50 times 25, the bond parity is equal to $1,250 in stock. Right? And so if that bond is trading at 1,200, woo, because it's worth 1,250 stock, it would typically be at a premium. Right? So you should be able, Doug, check out my channel today. I just posted a parity calculation. I did both, by the way, as a bonus. I answered the person's question about parity, and then I actually did it on the stock. And that example, Doug, they said, if a convertible bond is trading at 105% of parity, what is the convertible bond trading at? Right? So you had to calculate parity of the stock and then figure out the bond price and times it by 105. So yeah, put in parity of convertibles on my channel, Doug. Literally 15, 20 videos will come up. If you check out the video I did this morning, you'll see I have linked to my convertible lecture. So there's a link to the actual lecture on convertibles. But you need to put that into the intellectual ownership category. Brian, would you agree? I don't think there's any draw where you're not going to have to calculate parity at least once, maybe twice.
Not one draw. Yeah, they all have them.
Yeah, so that's definitely there. As I say, Doug, angels weep for you. If we tell you it's on the exam and you're not prepared for it, right? Life is too short. When I take an exam, Doug, I love to get to the first question I know the answer to. I go, woo, something I actually know here. It looks like, Brian, we're coming up on an hour. So Levi, sit tight, and I will do the Wheel of Fortune. We'll do our drawing, and then I'll come back and I'll pick up the remainder of these questions, Brian. But let me go get the Wheel of Fortune. And Brian, we usually let Brian, don't put it in the chat until I get the Wheel of Fortune up, because otherwise it won't register, Brian. So what are we going to put on the Wheel of Fortune tonight?
Well, for our Washington residents, there is no finer place in the summer.
All right. Now you got to put it exactly how Brian has it on the dry erase board. So if you're interested in our coaching call drawing, go ahead and do that. I'll put the Wheel of Fortune up. We'll do the drawing, and then I'll circle back and take care of whatever remaining questions we have. Let me go get the Wheel of Fortune. I call the Wheel of Fortune. I know it could be whatever. But
and I need new pens.
Nothing drives me nuts more than dry erase pens that are
every day I go through a new one.
Okay, there we go. Levi, let me get rid of that. And I'll come back to you, Levi. Where is Levi? Levi. There he is. Boom. So put Seattle into the chat. And what you win is a coaching call. You go to deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. And when you get there, you'll see coaching call on the class tab. You simply put that into there, and I show up. You'll get a video link, and then we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. All right, so we got 16. Last call. We got anybody else? Going once? Going twice? All right, here, spin the wheel. Marcel. Oh, hey, how cool. Winner. All right, Z400 Racer. So you win a coaching call. So go to my book, deantenneytutoring.setmore.com, class tab, coaching call winner, and register, and I'll see you there, and we'll do it. Now, if there is no tab for coaching call, that means I got to get there tonight or tomorrow and put it up. So don't panic. I'll check tonight or tomorrow morning if there isn't a tab, because when they're done, I can set up a new one. So I probably already did the coaching call. I think Carolyn, I think Carolyn won the last one. Whoever won. Marcel, I think we're in the hole for him for like four versions of this thing. All right, let's get rid of that. Boom. Okay, I'll circle back once we conclude. So we're going to end officially. We do an hour. We're a little over already. But remember, inch by inch, your exam's a cinch. Yard by yard, your exam is hard. And Brian, you say?
You got to learn to keep it simple. Stay with what you know. You take the test. Don't let the test take.
Ooh, I love it. Now I can tell you, Brian, that's what I'm going to put on that alpha exam. Are you going to take this alpha test, or is this alpha test going to take you? I love it. All right, Brian, I'll talk to you. I'll check in with you tomorrow, and I'm going to go ahead and circle back and take care of your question.
Go get it.
All right.
Get that.
See you next Tuesday.
All right.
Bye-bye. All right, so now let me go back and see what remaining questions we have here. So our last one was Levi. I think we answered Levi's question. Let's just see here. Levi, where's Levi? Levi. Here he is. Passes 66. Woohoo! Excited to look for coming out of my master with the SIE 66. I love it. You know, Levi, what's so great about that is now you're less of a speculative investment in human capital, right? If I'm a firm and you've already on your own got your SIE, you got your 66, working on your CFA, that tells me, man, this person has some initiative. And that's definitely somebody I would be interested in sponsoring for 7, knowing that I know they have already demonstrated that they can actually pass an exam. So excellent. Okay, let's see what else we got going on. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Keys Link is a great scores. Who must register a given estate as an IA or an IAR? So first point stick is you're never going to register with both the SEC and the state. It's one or the other. We just did a shared screen practice test today. And when I'm doing a shared screen practice test with somebody, I usually say very infrequently, let's hope, bad miss. And he had a really bad miss because he chose an answer that said, you're going to register with both the SEC and the state. That's never right. It's one or the other. So when you're doing questions, you got to first determine, is this a federally covered investment advisor? The most common definition of that is assets under management of 100 million or more. 100 million or more, from 1 million, 100 million to 110, you can choose. And I don't know if anybody who would choose state, given that they could go with the SEC. 110 or higher, you belong to the Fed. You register with the SEC. If not, then you go with the state. Now, the questions about investment advisor reps are very similar. You got to be careful. If it's a federally covered registered firm, investment advisory firm, and you're an IIAR, so let's say we're Fisher Investments, I don't know, but let's say Fisher manages $200 billion. I don't know, it could be 300, it could be 400, but it's certainly more than 110. So there's no doubt that Fisher Investments is a federally covered investment advisor. They're going to register with the SEC. And if you are an investment advisor representative of a federally covered advisor, it's very simple. You only register in a state in which you have a place of business. Period. Full stop. End of story. Now, if I'm already registered, let's say I set up an investment advisory firm, Anvil Rock Investment Management here in Seligman, Arizona. And, I set up an investment advisory firm. Maybe I have $80 million in assets under management. So I'm going to register with the state of Arizona. So now the question becomes, do I, as an investment advisor rep, have to register with the state of Arizona? The answer is absolutely. And now we want to do business in Nevada. Now, remember, if I'm federally covered, unless I have an office in Nevada, I could have 1,000, Nevada residents as clients. It's not a problem. If I have no office, I don't register. Now, let's say I'm a state covered. Now we have this thing called de minimis about whether my investment advisory firm has to register with the state of Nevada, or does my investment advisor representative have to register with the state of Nevada? De minimis is Latin for it's so small, who cares? So if I have no office in Nevada and I have 5 or fewer retail clients, I don't need to register, right? If I have more than 5, 6, then I have to register, or if I have an office. So that's a real brief overview of that. In terms of registration, this exam on NASA 6566 is called Regulation and Law. I prefer it would be called registration. How do we register a security? How do we register a broker-dealer? How do we register an agent? How do we register an investment advisory firm? How do we investment advisor rep? Now, earlier, Stick, we talked about the registration of a security, and I think we will go way into the weeds on that because it's only 2 or 3 questions. Same thing with broker-dealers and agents, 3 or 4 questions. More like 7 or 8 about the investment advisor and the investment advisor rep. So that's the most target-rich environment of that discussion. So I hope you found that helpful. I have a video that I'll link to called Who's Your Daddy? And it's about whether it's SEC, or state. And then Brian has a great video people find very helpful. I'll link to that as well, called Definitions of Registrations and Persons. Those are 2 videos that people find really helpful. And I'll link to that in this video description. All right, let's see what's next. I'm not going to do it tonight. It's been a long day. Maybe tomorrow at some point. Pass my SIE. Woo! Failed the 7. Oh, man, with a 70. I hate that. Oh, man, I'm with you. I hate that. Those high scores, almost passing, are really exasperating. Memory aid tips for remembering beta and alpha. Well, beta, maybe, I don't know if this helped or any. I'm just making this up on the fly, so maybe this will work. Beta is a measurement of volatility. And so I was joking with, people about the weather here off grid. I said, the weather has a high beta. It's very volatile. It could be like 20 degrees in the morning and like 115 at night. So beta is a measurement of volatility as compared to the market as a whole. And it's a pretty straightforward concept, particularly on 7. So, if I'm looking at a security or a mutual fund that has a beta of 1.5, that means it's 1.5 times more volatile than the market. So if the market return is 10, beta would suggest that I should be rewarded for the risk I'm taking in the volatility, and my expected return would be 15%. I simply took the market return, S&P 500 times 1.5, 15%. That's beta. And so, if I call you and I say, hey, Brittany, we got 13%, market did 10. And you say, well, then you got a lot of guts to be chatting up 13. I go, why are you such a Debbie Downer? And you said, well, Dean, you actually underperformed. Based on the beta, 13 isn't good. I go, oh, gee, you're no fun. Now, if I call you and say we got 17, now I got something to chat up. And that's alpha. Alpha is the excess return over beta. It can be positive or negative. So if I tell you, Brittany, that I'm seeking alpha, that means I'm seeking excess returns. And that means I'm taking greater risk. Right? There are entire websites and hedge funds called Seeking Alpha. Right? So that's what beta is. Beta is a measurement of volatility as compared to the market. It's a definitional question. And then alpha is excess over beta or below. That's what the excess is. It's a recognition question. Now, when you get to your 66 or 65, I might actually make you come up with the expected return of 15%. I might throw in risk-free stuff like that. So I hope that was helpful. Again, it's mainly an answer set: A, alpha; B, beta; C, I don't know, I'll call C delta. I'll call choice D gamma. If I say a measurement of a stock's volatility as compared to the market can best be described as, you say beta. If I say excess returns over beta can best be described as, you would say alpha. All right, Melissa, you're back. I'm glad. I'm so happy, Melissa. I'm so happy that you're back. I'm so happy you have a test date. And, that was great. I just love it when people allow people to learn from what they're asking. And that is going to be so helpful for so many people out there, because there are so many people that don't follow best practice. As I always say, my recommendation is a buffet. My recommendation is take what you like, leave what you don't. But I'm glad. I told you I like it. I like that you took our advice. It's kind of like Acolyte. I like Acolyte. He's doing all the right things we're asking him to do. By the way, I would tell you too, if you want people to help you, the more you follow the advice, the more willing I'm going to be to help you and drag you across the finish line, right? I told the guy today, we had a great day. So many people that were so anxious that yesterday, I felt like a therapist yesterday. I'm literally talking people off the wall, basically, But anyways, they all passed. And, part of that, well, I'm willing to make that commitment. Like this one guy, I said, listen, I can only see you at 6:30 in the morning. And I have to tell you that I'm not at my best at 6:30. I'm a morning person, but I like a cup of coffee, the morning papers, easing the day. But hey, if you'll make that commitment, I'll make that commitment. I'll meet you halfway on it. So it's better if you do what you're asked to do and then you miss, because then we'll help you. We'll help you anyways, but it's easier. 61. So Carolyn, we got some work to do. 61 means that, we were just talking about those high but almost passing scores. I'm dating myself as an OG, but in the old days, there wasn't a 30-day wait period. And so I would literally tell you to just go take it again, right? So if, you got like that high almost passing score, right? Boom. Brittany, I would just say, cue that thing up again. Get a different draw and stay down there to can pass. Now we actually make her wait 30 days. So that would be my first point, right? So 61 means the 30 days is going to be helpful for you because you have more work to do in terms of remediation, laying base, right? So that's what you should be focused on. You should be focused on laying more base knowledge, doing reading, watching videos, doing practice questions. That's what you should be doing in 30 days, remediation. 7278, I love it. That'll get it done. Not a problem. Yeah, I think you're good to knock it down. Go get it. Go get it. No relation to Colby College, but there's Colby Cheese. I forgot about Colby Cheese. And Colby, Wisconsin. I bet you, David, I bet Colby, Wisconsin is named after the same Colby that Colby College is. I used to go to summer classes in Colby, even as an adult. It's beautiful. It's in Waterville, Maine. What a beautiful campus. I went to Arizona State, and my campus is nowhere near as nice as Colby College. I mean, man, those men and women are living large. I mean, their dining hall looks like first class Four Seasons. But that'd be interesting. Yeah, I know Wisconsin's got a lot of dairy products in it, right? A lot of cheese, right? I'm located in Wisconsin. Well, Kaplan's headquarters, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be in La Crosse, Wisconsin. So I don't know if it's still there. Maybe because there was another part of Kaplan in Florida, and they were talking about they're going to make everybody in Wisconsin move to Florida. So I love the Midwest. I'm a big fan of the Midwest. Gets awful cold, man, awful cold, but I'm a big fan. If you're from the Midwest, David, you should be able to get all the ethical questions right. From the East Coast or West Coast, you might have to think a little harder, but it's still going to be the right answer. Marcel, I always tell mom hi every time I say Marcel said hi. And like I say, Marcel, we're either getting you to Vegas or I'm getting Brian to New Orleans. I still can't believe that young man has never been to New Orleans. And that's got to be on his bucket list for sure. 13 years, 7 left. I think you're fine. I think you're in good shape. So you just got to stay, like I say, I keep saying this over and over again with everybody. The key thing when your timeline is collapsing, and that's why I'm so gratified today on all these passing victories today from people. Literally, we were slamming it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And, sometimes I feel like I've accidentally turned myself into having a real job. And so we all were working our asses off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday for these Tuesday dates. And the key thing is not to get wobbly. You just got to continue to finish strong, right? You can't be getting wobbly towards the end. And that's what I'm so happy about is when people don't get wobbly, they finish strong, they cross the finish line. So that's what I would tell you. 2 weeks is fine. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't, as much as for trying to manage that anxiety and just keep working. Just keep working. AP, when I was doing a live class and the cohort had 20 people in it. And we do Monday through Thursday, and then they take a practice test Friday, and they're testing Monday. And so on Friday, after we scored up the practice test, I got with the corporate trainer, and I said, okay, let's go over these scores. We have 12 people who got over 70. Statistically, I think all 12 of them are going to pass. Okay, let's talk about the remaining 8. Of 6 of the 8 got between 60 and 70. And I think we're going to lose 3 of them statistically. And she goes, well, which 3? And we'll save them. I go, well, I don't know. It's just statistics. There's no reason for that. If they didn't get wobbly and they over the weekend just finished strong, they'd all pass. And they all passed. I was so happy because the same thing, right? They finished strong. They didn't go wobbly. And that left us with 2 people who got below 60. And so as it stands right now, we're 18 to 20 on this cohort. And I told this corporate trainer, I said, it's going to be very difficult for these folks because it happens, but all the stars have to line up. The problem they have below 60 is they have a knowledge deficit. They don't know what they're being asked. They don't know what their answer set is. And so that means over the weekend, they got to be doing 2 things at once. They got to be taking marks, doing an intellectual inventory, kind of figuring out where they're at and improve. And then they got to be laying more base. And that's a big ask. I was very proud of those 2 people. They both got 68 on the actual exam. To come back from below 60 on Friday to 68 means they put in the work. Now, good news, they retested, they both passed. So there you go. We ended up going 20 for 20. But so any mid-70 score, I feel good about anything above 70. I like having a higher margin of safety is always better, but that's kind of my mark. Below 70, you're at risk, not because of knowledge deficit, other things. Below 60 is a major knowledge deficit problem. I had somebody in AP, not you, because you told us your scores, but he was, this is like a mouse in a maze and you're going to get some cheese. No, he kept doing practice exams and getting below 60. I said, listen, you got to stop doing practice exams. Why are you doing that? You got to lay base. You're not doing anything to remediate. You're telling me you're doing 3 of these a day. You got to do 1 and remediate. So you got to lay some more base. I say no practice test for you for the next 3 days. The next 3 days, I want you to be doing other things. So trust me, if you'll do what I'm suggesting, when you go 3 days from now to take that practice test, it won't be a 50. I like that. Woohoo! Mr. Ponchi, what I always say about that is you actually passed 2 tests. You passed your 66, but you also passed a test of your resiliency. And passing that second test is actually, I think, more an indicator of your future success in our business. Passing your actual 66. There you go. I like it. I have a guy I'm working with today, and I was chatting him up to Brian because, man, he just demonstrated that I know how dedicated, how disciplined, how organized you got to be to do as well as he did today in our shared screen practice test. And he too had missed his mark. And boy, you would have never believed it because he just, your point, he meant, what you want to call that, man up. But you could tell he said, damn it, I'm going to lay some more base. And he ended up getting an 87 on our shared screen practice test today, man. And he earned it. I mean, he earned it. I put in twice the effort. There you go. I love it. It's work. I don't know when work became a bad word. Work is a good word, right? Work is good. You got to do the work. Scoring high 70s, I think that's great. I think you're right where you need to be, Michael. So no worries. My name is Marco. There you go. I love it. I love it, Marco. Thanks for your feedback. We love victorious test takers coming and joining us on Tuesday. It's a great morale boost. It bucks people up. As I told you, one of the purposes of Tuesday, besides helping you with test content, is to let people know you're not alone. Join our tribe. Come here Tuesday. Get some positive feedback. Talk to others in similar situations. Same with our Facebook community. Same with our Reddit community. So, you're a part of Guru Nation. You're not alone anymore. So stick with it, right? We just were talking about Melissa coming back, right? I'm so glad she did. I hope to see Melissa every Tuesday, or Acolyte's been joining us for most Tuesdays, right? I don't know why you wouldn't want to listen to Brian and I about what's on the test, but, you could always ask a victorious test taker what they got. YouTube videos, there you go. Still pretty young in the industry, 4 years. What occupation I look with my 7.6? I'm not sure. I mean, I got kind of lucky because I kind of made it up as I went along. I started out as a retail stockbroker and ended up as an institutional stockbroker. So I think I would just say be open to opportunities. I think when you're starting out, I'm a little different than other people in this regard. And I know people, again, it's a buffet. But I had a young man I was talking to about this situation in Volksville. And I said, I would be more interested in the learning opportunity than the money in the beginning of my career. I'd be thinking, okay, who am I going to be hanging out with in the office each day? And what can I learn from them? Because eventually the money will take care of itself. And so that would be what I'd be focused on if I'm starting out my career, is the learning opportunity. I was told I consider it an honor and a privilege, but, I've been telling people, me that at Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan, I guess, I don't know, a quasi celebrity of some sort. And I can see that they know that I like their firms, right? I just think if you were a young man or woman, most of the firms we have, Edward Jones, wherever the firm is, I was telling Brian, I'm just so excited about this new generation coming into our business. And I'm just really excited that they have these opportunities. And, it makes me, man, wish I was a young man again, right? And the idea that you're going to go work at one of these places and rub shoulders with successful men and women. I'm joking that most of the men and women who are at our firms any lengthy period of time are there because they want to be. They don't really need to be there if they didn't want to. And those are the kind of people that's fun to hang out with. So that would be my thing. I'm not sure. ChatGPT, ChatGPT, remember, is garbage in, garbage out. And ChatGPT has hallucinations. I can't tell you how many people will tell me I'm wrong because ChatGPT says regular weight settlement is T+2. And I assure you that ChatGPT is wrong and I am not. Right. So, however, though, the thing is awesome. Boltsville, I was going to try to think of a video, a lecture about dead people, because there's all kinds of questions, about what happens when somebody dies, questions. And I thought, man, what's the tactful way to title this video? And I put it in the chat GPT, and it came back with the afterlife of money. I thought, man, I would have never thought of that on my own in 100 years, right? So, I'm a truck driver with no real financial background. Well, who cares? Sometimes truck drivers with no financial background do better in our business because they don't have any baggage. They're tabula rasa. They're blank slate. So if you sold life insurance, that's great. So the sales game. I want to pass the 65. I recommend Kaplan with my Guru 15 discount code at checkout. You can get a Kaplan set of study materials. You always need paid study materials, right? So don't confuse supplements with paid study materials, right? My YouTube channel is a free supplement to your paid study materials. I like Kaplan. Kaplan likes me. No surprise. But I think STC is a fine vendor. Knopman is a white glove vendor. They charge more, but they deliver extra value. I'm not a big fan of Past Perfect because they get a little too obtuse. STC is a fine firm. I told you earlier, I'm not a big fan of Achievable because of the variance in their practice test scores and how closely that is or is not correlated. But there you go. Jeff, studying for 65 mid-September. Wow. Mid-October. Wow. That's plenty of time. I almost think that's too much, to be honest with you, Jeff. If I were, I was your investment advisory firm and you're my supervised person and you tell me that, I would say, man, geez, Jeff, I don't know if you're a part-time studier, but I think 8 weeks is sufficient. And so I would be looking for, maybe end of September. Well, that's not too far off, I guess. What is that, 10 weeks? But that's plenty of time. That's plenty of time. Should I start from beginnings? Yeah, I think I would start from the beginning. Yeah, there you go. All right, Morgan. Woo! As for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Victorious test takers. And we toast in your honor. Good news, Morgan. I hope we don't get any more test takers. It looks like I'm almost out of my Huradura here to salute my testing victories. I love you're joining us from LinkedIn. I broadcast to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. YouTube is our preferred platform, but I always love it when I see somebody from LinkedIn. So, Morgan, thank you so much for stopping in and sharing your test victory with the rest of us. There you go. I love it. Past my 7. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Yeah, I love that explication of playlist. I'll link that for you. I say to know your exam. Devin, where that comes from, the explication, the outline. I had an all-star analyst. He was had failed his Series 16 exam a couple of times, and his chief compliance officer called me and asked me to tutor him. And I said, well, there's nothing but downside for me to tutor a guy who's failed twice, and he's an all-star research analyst. I think, what's the problem? And literally it was I said, let me just spend some time with him. And her name is Harriet. I said, if I can be helpful, I'll charge. And if I can, I'll just chalk it up to, it wasn't a fit. But literally whoever was tutoring him never, actually shared with him the content outline. I said, here are the things that you need to be able to do in terms of an intellectual inventory. Fixed is no problem. I always think you should have the test specifications or content outline, NASA calls them test specifications, with you every time you're studying. Now, what Devin is referring to on all the exams, I actually go through that content and tell you what the test items are. I do it for all the exams. It's called the content outline explication. I saw, Devin, that I'm not endorsing this, but apparently a student made her own beautiful version of this with actual built-in practice questions. And hey, God bless her, because that's not me. I don't sell like PDFs and stuff. But I do want to order it from her. She said she put 120 hours into it, and I'm interested to see what her explication looks like. I'm predisposed to think I think it's going to be a good $30 investment for people. So, but I'm not going to endorse it yet because I haven't seen it yet. But love it. All right, Kyle, man. So what do you think? Am I going to have to pour a little more Huradura here or not? How many more tests? What hell is my label? Am I heard? There we go. Woo! Oh, they kind of match. All right. I think for you, Kyle, I'm going to have to pour, I think, a little more. I live off grid, so you have to forgive me if Tuesdays are Tipsy Tuesdays for me, because I don't get out that much here, living off grid. In fact, today I had to settle up with my contractor in the middle of the shared screen final. I have perimeter cameras, Kyle, and my perimeter cameras on my property. So there's a person, and it was these cows, and the cows out here are sacred to these ranchers. And these cows were on my solar array. They're walking in and out. And I thought, oh man, if that cow bumps my solar array, I'm gonna my power. I have a lithium battery backup, and I have a generator. But long story short, I told my contractor, said, hey, immediate priority. I need a fence around my solar array. So anyways, Tuesdays I get to enjoy a little bit. And I worked my butt off this last 4 or 5 days helping people make their markets. So tomorrow I'm going to sleep in. No, the drink. Oh, there you go. There you go. These comments are 45 volts. Sorry for the context. No worries. Sorry. Yeah, I'm behind. I'm trying to finish up. I apologize for that. But I'll finish up. It looks like we're almost finished. How many practice tests should you take? I failed by 2% 20 days ago, and you're scheduled in 10 days. I usually, with the test taker, Samantha, have a conversation like, how many more marks are we going to get? I don't want you doing 10, certainly. I would be comfortable with 3 or 4 spaced every other day, because remember, you got to spend as much time on remediation as actually doing the exams. So I would like 4 or 5 marks. I don't know what your current mark is, but I'd be happy with 4 or 5. The last being the day before the day before. So that would be day 7 or 8 that I would do the last one. Hey, Isaac, how are you? Another regular here on Tuesday nights. Do you need? Yeah, you need study materials of some sort. You need study materials, right? I have enough content. I'm not recommending this. I'm a supplement, but I have more than enough content to pass the SIE. So if you watch all my playlists and do all the practice tests and questions, the SIE, the answer is yes. On 60, not recommended. 66 and 7, absolutely not. You need paid study materials. We talked about Kaplan, whoever. First time barely failed. Well, that's good, Chris. You should go over the top this time. Love it. Love it. I took my 7 12 years ago. Well, there you go, right? I know someone who's coached, they have never, there you go. I'm with you. Remember, Rebecca, if it was 12 years ago, did you take the 2-3 hour sessions? Did you take the old 250 question 7? Because in those days, there were 55 questions on munis mandated by the MSRB. And when they went to the bifurcated it into the SIE and the 7, now there's way less muni questions. And the MSRB was not happy. But yeah, hey, FINRA said, we're not putting a bazillion muni questions on. Yeah, check the video out. There's a link. I told you I just did I think it's a great video. I mean, what I think are great videos, what other people think is different. But I was pretty proud of that video this morning, Doug. I really took that question. Explication is just the fancy word for an explanation in depth. So every once in a while, someone's, what are these explication things? That's just a fancy word for explanations in depth, right? That one today was sent in, and I kind of really tore it apart. Yeah, it's under 100. There you go. Seattle, no, a little late. We already did the drawing. It looks like people are joining us late. Yeah, we did that. Okay. Okay. Oh, no, I see. I'm behind. Now that's what's happening. That's where the Seattle. Okay. Oh, my God. I apologize. So I'm just now catching up to real time. I do not have a favorite for regulation. I do have Rules of the Road, a video on regulation. I probably need to redo it, but it's a good video. It's called Rules of the Road, and it's on regulations. Let's see. Alpha. Well, bouncy, I like it, but absolute over beta. Remember, it's a return as compared to beta. Yeah. I don't like absolute because that's just not what the test is going to use. But right, if you were talking to like a hedge fund manager like Ray Dalio or somebody like that would be talking about absolute returns, and they would mean alpha. Yeah, you can form a syndicate for tutoring. If you go to the booking page, the link is provided, and I got a guy whose boss bought the office tutoring, and so I hit the Zoom link. But try and give me a heads up, and there's like 4 of them, so that helps on the cost. So I don't opt. There's no link for a group tutoring session, but if you book tutoring and you want to share it, I'm okay with that. A lot of people do. I do put up group like classes every once in a while. I've been haven't had time to do that, but I offer them as replays. And when I do their Thursday nights, and I usually charge some nominal fee of $20, $30, whatever the case may be. Well, thank you, Wild. Thank you. Not a problem. 7107. Oh man, that so hurts. We talked about it. I'll link in the video description. You failed. Is it over? The answer is no. Spoiler alert. I have 5 recommendations about how to respond to that misfortune, and you'll find that in the video description as a link. I checked that out. I answered earlier the first of those recommendations, so you could also rewind this, and you can find the first recommendation. Coming up 2 years. Took a 3 year. You're in a good spot. Absolutely. 2 years living as I for all you're up, right? The best way to start saying, what would be the best way? Always. So I'm an OG, Oscar. Read the book. The best way to start the test is to read the book cover to cover. People get incredulous. They, well, how long that's going to take? I say, Oscar, read for an hour and see how many pages you read. Then take the book, divide by the page read rate, and tell you how many hours. Right. So that would be my first. I would do the 9 before the 10. The 9 is not as difficult as the 10. We had a victorious 10 test taker, Oscar. That 10 is a real slog. So, so if you wanted to get the slog first, go for the 10 and then circle back for the 9. Okay. Woohoo. Yeah. +1 for the refill. It looks like I'm going to be done here in a minute. Well, I don't drive. I told you I'm off grid. So I took the farm truck to the dump today, and then my sports car is in the garage. And, I don't really drive that. If I wanted to drive somewhere, it would take me an hour to get to, either an hour and a half to Flagstaff or an hour to Kingman. So it's not like I'm driving anywhere. Hi, Guy. How are you? All right. Nice to meet you, Chad. There you go. We are done. All right. So thank you so much. We're here every Tuesday. If you have, I didn't do the explication requests. I had some requests come in before, and I didn't do them. I'll just do a separate video for those and knock them out. But you can, and some people did tonight. I just didn't get around to it. You can send me, if you have a question, email explication request at guruexamprep.com. And then you're at the front of the queue for Tuesday. And, show up, because if you don't show up, then what will happen is probably, I don't mean to, but I didn't get to those questions. But I'll take care of them either individually by email or by video format. So make sure if you got a question, just send it my way. All right, everybody. I'll see you next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Arizona time. Same bat time, same bat channel. See you then.